How are you guys doing tonight? Okay, that's great. That puts me at ease, so I appreciate it. My name is Franklin Etter, and I am a local O.U.R. Kaysville volunteer, and they asked me to introduce this program today, and they said that they wanted someone who really, truly represents Kaysville, and I thought, no one represents Kaysville like me. I mean, who else can they pick other than a Swiss Haitian who looks like a 15-year-old Arab who also happens to really be from New York? So who else can represent Kaysville other than me, right? But I'm grateful that you guys are here. I'm grateful to see so many people that are behind this cause. This is an amazing organization that truly is trying to change the world, and they're trying to do it one child at a time. And I really do believe that. Before we even get started, I really want to thank, first and foremost, all of the volunteers. There have been so many volunteers over the last several weeks, and they've inspired me. And just to give you guys an idea, Kaysville O.U.R. Rescue didn't even exist, 3.5, 4 weeks ago. That was when it started. And you've probably seen, yep, thanks guys. I mean, that just shows you the power of what people can do when they really get behind a cause, when they're passionate about something, when they believe in something. And I've been truly inspired by the volunteers. I also want to thank the sponsors that are all here today for all that they've given, not just financially, but many sponsors have given a lot of their time and a lot of their services, and it has been just fantastic and amazing to see that. I also want to make sure that I thank RedCastle Media, Mike and Ike, what we call these guys. They've been following around all of the volunteers, and they have amazing footage of what the volunteers have done, and we're going to show you that in just a little bit. But there's two people that I really want to thank specifically, and Jason Jones and Jackie Jones. I don't know where they are, but I want you guys to give them a round of applause. There's Jason. And have Katie stand up. That's his beautiful wife, Katie. And it's because of them that we're here today. Jason came up to me, and I'll tell you kind of the story really quickly. I heard about O.U.R. about a year ago from a client, and I thought that's a pretty amazing organization, but I never did anything. I didn't get involved. And then I had a neighbor who said, hey, you're from Haiti. You need to see this video of this guy who's rescuing children in Haiti. And I thought, this is amazing. I mean, this is incredible, and this organization is incredible. And I thought, I want to get involved. But again, I didn't do anything. I didn't act on that. And then Jason called me up and said, hey, I have this friend that I've known, I knew 20 years ago. His name's Tim Ballard. He's going to come speak at my house about this organization. And I thought, you know what? This is the third time that I'm hearing about this. I better get involved. And I can't look away anymore. And I have 5 children of my own, 5 very young children. And I'll tell you what, I love them more than anything in this world. And the thought of anything happening to them would be devastating. And when I think about my children, I think, you know what? There's another father somewhere in this world who's missing his children and who doesn't know. He might not even know what's happening to his children, on a nightly basis or on a daily basis, and the horrors that they're going through. And when I thought about that, I thought, you know what? I've got to get involved and I've got to do something. And so I want to thank Jason for making the invitation and for Jackie for helping to set up this event. She's the one that's kind of the brains behind all of this. I want to share with you guys really quickly just a quick quote from Abraham Lincoln. And this is a quote that I hope will inspire you, and it inspired me. It says, you cannot escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today. You cannot escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today. The problem of human trafficking, of sex trafficking, isn't going to go away if we just turn the other way or say we're too busy or say that other things are going on in our lives. It will catch up with us, and it will be in our own backyards. And actually, I've been reading, the Attorney General here has been helping out with cases here in Utah. So it is in our own backyard, and we can't turn away. We need to get involved. And so what we're asking all of you here today is to be active, get involved in this cause. Do whatever you can, donate however you can, whether it's your time or your money. But get involved, because all of you here, you have children in your lives, your own children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, right? Or you know children in your lives, so please get involved. We're going to have Mrs. Utah, our very own Kaysville, Terrell Griffin, is going to come up here, and she's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Following her, our beloved Kaysville resident, David McSwain, is going to come up, and he's going to give us the invocation. Then following David and Terrell, we will have a video that we want you guys to watch, and this is the video that was put together by Mike and Ike, the RedCastle media guys. Phenomenal, inspiring video. And I watched it last night, and I was just so touched by that, so moved, and I hope it has the same effect on you. I'll turn the time over to Terrell.
Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Our beloved Father, we, a few of thy children, gather this evening here in Kaysville for a most worthy cause, and what's even more important, Father, for a morally just and right cause. We are grateful to be a part of it. We pray that we will take the proper responsibility upon ourselves to do what we can to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves at this time. We ask thee to bless our Attorney General, Sean Reyes, and Tim Ballard, who will address us, that thy hand will be with them, that they will be able to express themselves as to the importance of the things that they are involved in. We pray that thou bless them in their efforts on both sides of the law in this. We're grateful that Tim is here and able to take his time, who has placed he and his co-workers that are a part of this in harm's way many times, for those that cannot defend themselves. And Father, in closing, we ask thee to put a special blessing, as Franklin mentioned, upon the youth and the children that find themselves estranged from their families. We pray that thou will bless them and be with them until help can come to them. We do this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
When you have the experience of holding a child in your arms that has been raped, that has been trafficked, and you have that child holding on to you for dear life, there's no words that can explain that feeling. I would invite people to picture their child or their grandchild in a catalog that traffickers send around and sell these children for cents. Imagine your child in that catalog. If me and my team don't find these kids and go for these kids, no one is going to. It's our job. We have to do something. We all have to do something.
Trafficking is a $32 billion industry. There are about 27 million that are being trafficked, 2 million of those in sex trafficking.
I think it's critical that people throughout the world understand what an epidemic human trafficking really is.
The issue of trafficking and pornography are two things that are very much linked together, and you really can't get away from one without the other being there.
We've taken down rescued 152 children in one day and put 18 bad guys in jail, prison sentences ranging from 15 years to 60 years. And we follow it through. We don't do a jump and a rescue unless we have back-end rehab set up. It doesn't do us any good to go in and save kids and then return them back to the bad guys.
I haven't met a person yet who, once they understand what's going on, isn't horrified at first and then really passionate about trying to help.
From a community standpoint, there is absolutely something that we can do.
Today we are here at Harmon's, and it has been incredible.
And this event is about Operation Underground Railroad. We want to save kids.
We met Tim Ballard. He was my husband's friend about 20 years ago, and once we heard that he was doing this to rescue kids from slavery, we just haven't been able to sleep because we're so excited about helping and being a part of freeing these kids and getting them a better life.
All of the proceeds go directly to the organization, to Operation Underground Railroad. Harmon's, they're doing this out of the goodness of their hearts, which is phenomenal. All of the people that you see here, all these volunteers, they're doing it out of the goodness of their hearts, which is phenomenal.
When I saw some of the things that were going on, I knew that this was a small way that I could help by being here today.
It's not just saving one child, it's saving generations after that child.
This Kaysville community has banded together to raise enough money to save these kids.
It's a horrible thing that these children are living in. They have no advocate, they have no future. It's a nightmare that they're living in. We need to save them.
I just wanted to be involved because kids just like me are being helped by this amazing organization.
So our goal is $50,000 by Christmas, and we want to give these kids, a Christmas to remember. Some of these kids have never had Christmas. They don't even really know what it is.
And having 4 kids at home and going to sleep every night in a nice warm bed, knowing that my kids are safe, and then thinking about the kids that Tim and his team are trying to rescue I can't sleep. It's a hard thing to do, right? And so as we talked to Tim and his team, they said, you know what, we have a mission. And as a group, we said, we want to sponsor our very own mission. We want to be part of the solution. We want to stand up and not be part of the group that just looks the other way.
It was a pretty touching, pretty moving video. And the thing that's even more impressive about that is that this is what was done just in the last 3.5 weeks by all of these volunteers. And you can see that everyone was engaged, everyone was very passionate about the cause, and everyone wants to help children. And I think this is a cause that's much beyond any individual. We appreciate again Mike and Ike for putting that together for us. Our next speaker I'm going to introduce, when I was putting together everything for him, there's about 5 or 6 pages worth of material because he's done so much in a short time span, and I don't want to embarrass him by speaking a little bit too much, but I condensed it down to a few paragraphs. He was raised in Southern California. He graduated summa cum laude from BYU in 1994 and earned his law degree with honors from UC Berkeley in 1997. He practiced for nearly 14 years at Parsons, Bill & Latimer, the largest law firm in the state, where he became one of the first minority lawyers to make partner at a major Utah firm. Before his current office, he was among the most dynamic and successful young professionals in the country. He has been recognized nationally and locally for his legal skills and professionalism. He has lent his legal expertise to media outlets ranging from Fox National Business News to The Economist. He has done a lot of work. I'm going to skip over quite a bit, but he has served on boards of many profit and nonprofit entities. He is an advocate of many underrepresented groups in our state, and especially those young children that are involved in human trafficking. He is a great supporter of Operation Underground Railroad and has even participated in jump team operations. But I'm sure that he would say the same thing I put here most importantly. He is a husband and a father. He is married to Seisha, and they are the proud parents of 6 children. And in his free time, he enjoys playing morning basketball, coaching his kids in youth football, baseball, basketball, volleyball, and soccer, taking walks or doing anything with Seisha, watching SportsCenter, attending and speaking at Comic-Cons, as well as cooking, shooting guns, and watching mixed martial arts now that his fighting days are over. And I put this in here because I thought it was pretty awesome. He is the only official rapping attorney general in the country. So I asked him, I said, hey, could you give us a few verses? I'd appreciate it. So I'd like you guys to welcome our Utah Attorney General, Sean Reyes.
Can they hear me? Anybody? Everybody in the back? Excellent. Thank you so much, Franklin. You don't really want me to rap, do you, Franklin? All right, all right. This is kind of some pressure. So if I were rapping about my current job, maybe it would go something like this. As I'm a devastating, innovating, rhyming AG, repping 801 Utah SLC. Don't waste your time trying to battle me, because I'd knock you out. You're Frazier, I'm Ali. Yes, Ali, AKA Cassius Clay. You want to take my title, best step away. Political pugilist, I don't play. You feeling lucky, punk? Come on and make my day. So, thank you. I should probably just stop there, ladies and gentlemen, but I also need to do something very quickly for my social media team. So you're all photobombing. Now your turn here on that side. Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Thank you for letting me be here and take some time. I'll be honest, I was slated to be in New York City tonight. I have to run a re-election next year, and we're in that election cycle, and I was supposed to be at a fundraising dinner with the Koch brothers, no less, and several well-heeled potential donors. But I got a call from Rad and Tim, I think it was about a week and a half ago, and they said, you have to protect this night. And so we canceled those plans, and we're here tonight. And then I ran into Jackie, Hurricane Jackie, for those of you who know Jackie Jones. And then it was all over. And she really told me about how much this community has rallied together. And I am so impressed by all of you here in Kaysville, but I understand that you also have support from neighboring communities. But let me take my hat off to you tonight, Kaysville. You are really a model and a template for how to do this. You didn't wait for anybody to ask you to get involved. You just jumped right in. And I think if there is any sort of spirit that embodies O.U.R. is just like that. The people that are involved in O.U.R., they don't wait around. They just make things happen. This is Tim Ballard and his team, and I'm going to talk about Tim a little bit in a second and really embarrass him. Now, the beauty of speaking tonight with Tim is that we often get a chance to speak together. In fact, just a couple days ago, Tim and I were doing a presentation at UVU at the International Women of the Mountains Conference to educate the world about this plague, this pandemic of human trafficking. But in that role, they said, Tim, you talk about the nonprofit approach, and General Reyes, you talk about the law enforcement approach. And so usually we're sort of splitting up duties, and he's talking about O.U.R. and I'm talking about what the state of Utah continues to do and sort of leading out in the world in educating and fighting and investigating and prosecuting human trafficking. But fortunately tonight, I don't really have to get into all of that. If you're interested in it, we'll talk about it another time. And I have the absolute privilege to just talk about Operation Underground Railroad and my experience with this wonderful organization. Before I do that, though, if you'll indulge me, let me sort of set the stage, frame the issue for you, because I would suspect that some of you, like most of your neighbors in this community and frankly around the United States, really didn't have a clue about what a pervasive and what a horrible institution modern-day human slavery is. And I'll give you a few statistics, and I don't want to depress you. I don't want to make you live in fear. Tim and I really just want to awaken in you an awareness and a healthy respect for the danger that exists in the plight of so many innocent around the world. So today, depending on which agency or organization you talk to, they will tell you that there are somewhere between 20 million on the conservative side to 40 million modern-day slaves. Ladies and gentlemen, that is more slaves today than during the entire 300 years of the transatlantic slave trade. And let me be very, very clear. I am in no way trying to minimize the terrible blight and absolute stain that the transatlantic slave trade was on our world history. But if you're just talking about raw numbers, think about that. By all scholarly accounts, they peg the number of slaves in those 300 years at 12.5 to 13 million. And what did I just say? Today, 20 to 40 million. Can you imagine that? Why are people not more outraged? Why are we not talking about this all of the time? It's amazing to me that human trafficking has now become the most lucrative criminal enterprise worldwide, bar none. In terms of where it sits, it has outstripped, it has hurdled gun running, arms dealing, counterfeiting, from anywhere from Prada and Gucci bags and fake software. Each of those things are multi-billion-dollar industries unto themselves, and human trafficking has leapfrogged all of those, and it sits right now only behind drug dealing by official counts. But I believe that right now human trafficking has already surpassed drug trafficking. We just don't realize it yet. That is how serious of an issue this is economically. That is how serious of an issue this is from a safety and humanitarian standpoint. And what I love about talking about this issue and energizing at a grassroots level wonderful citizens like you who will stand up and take a stand is that this isn't a Republican issue or a Democrat issue. This is a humanitarian issue. It's a human issue. And we need all of you together, joining your voices with ours to say, when the history books are written, and we read, and our children and grandchildren read, that at the height of this horrible, horrible enterprise, there was a valiant group, a courageous number of people. And I strongly believe that in those annals, the names of Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad will be mentioned. That it was the grassroots, it was the people, just like here in Kaysville, that stood up with them and said, no more, we'll not tolerate this anymore, and fought back and ultimately ended someday the scourge that is human trafficking worldwide. That is why I'm excited about this, because those young boys and girls need our help so much. I could literally have 100 different statistics that would chill you to the bone in terms of who's trafficked, what they're trafficked for. It's not just sex trafficking or sex exploitation. A lot of it's labor trafficking, organ harvesting, illegal adoptions, buying little children so that warlords can strap bombs to them and turn them into suicide bombers, or arm them and fill their hearts with hate so that by the time they're 10 or 11 years old, they become vicious fighting machines. These are all of the things that people are trafficked for. But tonight we're focused on the mission of Operation Underground Railroad. And they have such a critical mission, and that is to disrupt child sex trafficking. And when you talk about that 40 million, anywhere from 2 to 5 million of those people who are enslaved are children trafficked for sex. There's so much to talk about, and I've got about 6 or 7 more minutes, and I want to try to wrap this up by telling you an experience that I had. Last year, our office, in the AG's office, we prosecuted a horrible demon, a human trafficker from Central America that had come into our country, had been deported 6 times, and had come back 7 times. And law enforcement agencies had never been able to make a case against him. Finally, we were able to find a brave soul to testify, and we committed, instead of sending him back to his country and waiting for him to come back here, we prosecuted him under Utah law in the U.S. justice system so that he would never terrorize our children, never sell his drugs and mule his drugs through these little boys that he abused, that he would never do that again. And fortunately, we were able to get our law enforcement partners at the federal level to forestall any deportation. We prosecuted him. By the time we filed charging documents, we had 60 victims willing to come forward and testify against him. And seeing the weight of that evidence, he actually took his own life during the pendency of that trial. But that really opened up my eyes to the horrors that are happening here in Utah. But I talked to Tim and said, Tim, if that's happening here in quiet little Utah, what's going on in the world? And Tim said, Sean, let me tell you. He said, it was so harrowing that I had to leave my position as a well-respected, well-compensated agent for the Homeland Security Department. And Tim was frustrated. He left his badge, his career, the safety of his family, his job, his pension, so that he could come out and purely with faith rally other of his brothers from Navy SEALs, from the CIA, from the FBI, and give them a vision that they could do what the U.S. government, as strong and as mighty as we are, could not do. And that is to go directly and very transparently, very responsibly, very safely work with other governments throughout the world who crave and need the expertise that Tim and his group have. And he could take that and help those countries protect themselves, train their law enforcement officers, work with their prosecutors, help their legislators pass better laws to protect victims, and sentence more seriously perpetrators. And that's what Operation Underground Railroad did. That was its vision. And when I saw that vision and caught that vision, I so wanted to be a part of it. And I said, Tim, if there's any chance for me to go down with you all on any operation, anywhere, you name the time and the place, and I will make it happen. Well, I wasn't expecting Tim to call me a couple weeks before the election last year saying, hey, Sean, we got the perfect operation for you. And if you noticed, my few vignettes there is because I had pneumonia on a godforsaken little island off the coast of Cartagena, and they were taking film of me there right as we were preparing for this operation. Tim said, come down with us. The Colombian government, because we've had a lot of success and we've built up trust with them there, they want us to come down and set up an operation to take down a trafficking cartel that has 20 children. Well, those 20 turned into 50 as the intel grew, and we didn't want to just take down part of the organization and let the rest abscond with other children, perhaps never to see them again. So Tim and his group very carefully set up backstories, and we sent in a very well-respected Utah businessman who posed as the buyer, and he was going to have a sex party with these little kids that they were selling in Cartagena, Colombia. And Tim said, when you went down to Cartagena, you could just walk off the plane, walk on the beach, and people would approach you. You want a little girl? You want a little boy? How much? What do you want to do with them? And they said, you get to come down with me. And my team and my family at first said, wow, maybe that's not a great idea. You do have an election in a couple of weeks. And my chief civil deputy, who is a 2-star general, some of you know him because he's from Davis County, named Brian Tarbett, a great American, a great hero. Thank you. General Tarbett, the real general, they call me general, but I'm just a lawyer. General Tarbett said, literally, and he's always very respectful, he said, boss, I would not send my own troops down to that, I won't say how he described that area. He said, no way you're going to go down there. And I said, Brian, with all due respect, General, I always listen to you, but this time I really feel like God is with us and I need to go. What else can I do on a weekend? I could be mowing my lawn, could be coaching my boys' football teams, all wonderful things, or I could be going with Tim's team to liberate little girls and boys from the clutches and evil of these terrorists, these traffickers. And so we, in the middle of the night on a Wednesday, in the cover of darkness, took off, spent all Thursday traveling, got there Friday and set up an operation. And it has been one of the transformative experiences of my life. We worked with their law enforcement, local law enforcement, federal law enforcement, even their Coast Guard, and their child and family services. And one of the things that drew me right away, I've sat on maybe over a dozen nonprofit boards during my career. And I know that there's a lot of corruption, and there's a lot of fraud, and there's a lot of ego in the nonprofit world. I saw none of that, and I really looked hard at Operation Underground Railroad. No way can you have the success that they have had. No way can you raise money like they have. No way can you have the media attention unless they're doing something wrong. I looked long and hard, and I could find nothing wrong, so much so that I asked the governor, even though I'd stepped off all my other boards, if I could stay on with Fight the New Drug, good friends of mine, and come onto the board of Operation Underground Railroad because I was so passionate about what they were doing. Tim graciously said yes, and then we were down there all of a sudden. We brought the traffickers and these little girls to an isolated little island that Tim had rented. He did say it was going to be a resort island. I don't know about you. Resort connotes to me something like, the Four Seasons. This was more like a reality show, like Survivor Borneo. It was not a resort. Nevertheless, we were there, segregated these young girls, took the traffickers, transacted with them, gave them a whole lot of money for the opportunity to have a sex party. And then we were taken down by local law enforcement like an episode of Cops. They arrested the bad guys, and they let us go, and we gave all the credit to local law enforcement to build them up and to make sure that they could continue to do their jobs well. But during that time, I got to look into the faces of little girls 2 times. Once, when the operation hit a little snag, and instead of taking 2 minutes for the takedown, it took more like 45 minutes, and we were just on our feet trying to keep things alive. I was playing a bodyguard for the jefe, the buyer. And so Tim and I speak Spanish, and Tim had me right there, and we were trying to keep this alive, this deal, without giving up our cover. And they brought two little girls out, and they wanted to give these two, I think 11 and 12-year-olds, to El Jefe as special gifts, and said, no man's ever touched them. You can do whatever you want to them. And the drugs that they had given these girls early in the morning to dull the sting and the pain had worn off, and now, looking into their eyes, it was one of the most harrowing things that I've ever seen. The hopelessness, them staring back at us, knowing that we would soon be abusing them and taking advantage of them. Well, fortunately, as I said, things worked out. The takedown did occur. And after we were leaving, on our way off of the island, these same little girls that we saw earlier, they now had joined other girls, and they were singing to us. All these 54 young kids who were liberated and who were finally going to get to go back to their families, many of whom had been praying for their safe return. And they were singing, God bless America, and saying, thank you, Americans, and we love you, and singing songs to us. And that sound of freedom, that sound of liberation versus that hopelessness that we saw, both of those made such an impact on me, so transformative, that I came back a different person and vowed for the rest of my life, in whatever capacity I can, however I can, I will stand up until human trafficking is utterly eradicated from this earth. Thank you. So many people say that sounds very Pollyanna, and how can you make that happen? There's no way that you can really make a difference like that. And Tim and I both grew up with a story that we love to share, and it's the starfish story of a young boy throwing starfish frantically into the ocean, and an older man walks down to the beach and sees him and comes up to the boy and says, what are you doing? Why are you throwing starfish back? And he says, well, the sun's come up and the tide has receded, and if I don't get all these starfish back in really soon, they're all going to dry up and die. And the older gentleman looks at him and says, but son, look down the shore. There are tens of thousands of these starfish. How can you really make a difference? There's no way you can get them all back in. Are you really making a difference? The young boy thinks about it for a second, picks up a starfish, throws it back in the ocean, looks up to the older gentleman and says, I don't know, but I just made a difference for that one. And one by one, each of you can make a difference, whether it's one child, one cartel, one operation. That is how we will do this together. And Tim Ballard, let me tell you the epilogue to that Colombia story that I think really is the icing on the cake. Because it was great that we disrupted that one cartel and brought those children home. But because of what Tim and his team did, because of the training that they gave, and they've brought those Colombian agents here to Utah, and they've trained them here. Because of the confidence that they gave them, because of the credit that they were given, they continued in Colombia to do more and more and more operations, following the template that Tim had set up for them. And they were successful at taking down many more cartels, so much so that months later, when Tim and O.U.R. tried to do another operation down there, they could not find a single person in the entire city of Cartagena, one of the hot spots for human trafficking just 6 months before. They could not find a single person who would sell them a child because of the work that they had done. I don't know if you see the import of that, but this is what O.U.R. does in all of the countries where they go. They're creating an international firewall, and it was such a privilege to be a part of that. And they were very gracious. Now, we didn't tell anybody that I was going down. In fact, nobody knew except Tim and the jump team. We didn't publicize it. I didn't want people thinking it had anything to do with the election or that it was politically motivated. We did not want to distract from the important work that Tim has done. But come February of this last year, some media, they always seem to find out. Media, that's what they do. And they asked, and we said, of course, yes, we did go down. And it's now turned into opportunities for us to educate people like you about trafficking. And so I know I've taken longer than my 15 minutes, and I will take it out, I promise Hurricane Jackie, from the 4 minutes that you have for me in other places. But I didn't know a better way to introduce Tim Ballard. I didn't know a better way to introduce Operation Underground Railroad than to talk about my own personal experience. And then to know in my heart that these precious children that Tim and the jump team helped liberate were in good hands because of the Elizabeth Smart Foundation. You talk about a marriage of 2 amazing organizations together. I don't know if you realize, ladies and gentlemen, they're one now. O.U.R. encompasses the Elizabeth Smart Foundation. So not only do they liberate these precious children, they make sure that the money that you help raise goes to the much more difficult fight, long-term, helping these children, these survivors, not just become survivors, but thrivers, that they get educational opportunities, health and medical attention, a stable place, an environment, sometimes a safe house, that if they need to testify in a prosecution that they're protected and they're safe, they go back to their families or a safe environment. That is the magic of O.U.R. I have never been around an organization, and I'm not here to fundraise for them. I'm only here to tell you that I've never been around an organization that has inspired me so much. I've never been around a group of people with more integrity, who care more passionately about what they do. And all of you now are part of the O.U.R. family, or could be. Please do whatever you can to open up your resources, your time, your spheres of influence to become abolitionists here in this fight. Thank you all so much. God bless you. And now I get the amazing privilege to introduce someone who's one of my heroes, who I've traveled the country with, who's testified with me in front of the United States Congress about these issues, who's testified in other arenas and environments to groups and organizations about the critical fight that we are involved in.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow. Thanks. Thank you so much. And Jason and Jackie Jones and Jackie, the Hurricane Jackie, and everybody else. Just a couple weeks ago, we were sitting in Jason's house just with a couple of people, and they said, we want to do something. I thought, this is so awesome. Thank you so much. And I've been out of the country, out of town, and I have this awesome team working with Jason and everybody, and I rolled up. I could not believe what I was seeing. And I'm very touched, because this is how we're going to take care of this problem. Slavery in the United States did not go away because the government rose up and said, we're getting rid of this. That's not what happened. Read your history. That's not what happened. And this is not an anti-government. We need the government. I love the United States government. But it was the people that rose up like this and said, we are not going to stand for this. And they got so loud, like you are getting, that they had to move. Governments moved. Other organizations moved. Things like the Underground Railroad, the original one, rose up. And of course, we're trying to harness some of that energy, and that's why we call ourselves Operation Underground Railroad, because the problem is so similar, and the solution is the same. And so to see it happening, you read about the abolitionists in the 19th century. You are the modern day abolitionists. Make no mistake, you are it. You are what happened then. It's happening again. And so I'm just so touched, and thank you so much for coming out and supporting us. So long as these kind of things keep happening, we will continue to save children. And our goal is the eradication of slavery. And General Reyes mentioned these numbers, and you're thinking it's impossible. It's not impossible. General Reyes shared this story where we go back into Cartagena after a series of operations, and no one is selling kids because they're scared to death to sell kids. Because we've done so many operations and the media has reported so much that they're not doing it. Travelers aren't traveling. Now, I don't know how long that deterrent effect is going to last in that particular city, but our goal is to have offices in every nation on earth. And 1, 2, 3 operations every month in every city. And we maintain that deterrence. We might not be able to pull 50 million out, but we can scare everybody into these evil, wicked people. We can scare them and deter them and rescue kids who never knew they needed to be rescued. Rescue them before they get kidnapped and trafficked. The reason that we created Operation Underground Railroad, the reason it started, really began here in this state. It began with a story that I came across in the Deseret News. I was an agent, mostly in California. And when I moved to Utah, I was only here about 1.5 years before I left the government altogether. And like I said, it was largely because of this story I came across about a little boy who he was born in Utah, born in St. George, of Haitian descent. And his family moved back to Port-au-Prince, Haiti, where he was kidnapped at 3 years old. He was kidnapped from his church, an LDS church where his father was one of the leaders, kidnapped and ransomed. They paid the ransom, they kept the money, the traffickers kept the money, and then sold him to people. Because that's what, Haiti's one of the highest trafficking nations per capita. And I read this story, and I thought, who's helping this man find his son? And I was able to contact this man, and I was trying to get the government to open up a case on this, and I couldn't get the support because there were no leads. There was nothing to do. The government, U.S. government, had sent a small team in when it happened because he was a U.S. citizen. They spent a week there, and in the aftermath of the earthquake and everything else, they couldn't get any leads tracked down, and so they came back. And I thought, certainly there's something else that can be done. And I couldn't get the support. So some friends of mine flew this man up to Salt Lake. And I sat down with him. And I had been working child crimes cases for 12 years. But I had never experienced something like this before. And I sat down with him. And the humblest man I've ever met in my life. And I said, tell me the story. Tell me what happened, and tell me what's happening. Who's looking for your son? And he proceeds to tell me this story, and he said, I'm looking for my son. I said, yeah, but who else? He says, just me. He said, I walk the streets of Port-au-Prince every night. He said that he arbitrarily picks a neighborhood in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and spends all night walking, hoping that he will hear his son cry. He'll hear his son's voice call to him. I said, do you have any leads? He says, yes, I have leads. I think I know where he might be. And I promised him that we would do everything we could to help him. And before he left, we met we were at Thanksgiving Point at a little cafe there. And before he left, he said, I want to just say one thing to you. And he said this so humbly, but he wanted me to understand, and I want you to understand. He said, do you have kids? And I said, yeah, I have 6 kids. He said, can you imagine going to sleep in your comfortable bed, knowing that one of your kids' beds was empty, knowing that they were out there somewhere? Could you sleep? I said, no, there's no way I could even dream about sleeping. He said, I haven't slept since my boy was taken. And I made a promise right there that I would do everything that I could to help this man find his son. And when we couldn't do anything for him, this was one of 2 cases, and I'll tell you about the other one in a second, that really pushed me out. And I said, I promised this man we're going to do something. And I believed in people. I believed in you, that you would support us if we just jumped out. And so we did. We jumped out with very, very little money. And my wife not only let me, but when I faltered and said, I can't do this, I can't leave the most secure job on earth and jump into the most insecure job on earth. She was the one who kicked me out the door and said, you are going to do this. And so we did, and we went down. You saw some clips of what I'm going to tell you next. We went down to Haiti. We went into the police there. They opened the case file. They were very cooperative. They said, we just don't have the resources to do this proactive investigation and find this little boy. Kids are kidnapped all the time here. And so we took the case file and we went to the place where we were told, where all the evidence led. This little boy's name is Gardy, that he probably was here. We believed he was there. It was, like I said, the evidence was pretty clear. But in terms of follow-up action, it would take some creativity and resources. And so we, working with the Haitian police, we went into this, all I can describe it as is a dog house. You wouldn't let your dog live in this place. It was horrific. And there was 28 children, 6 months up to 13 years old. And we walked in there, and because we knew how to talk the talk and play the role, within 10 minutes, the director of this place made it very clear that all these children were for sale. For $10,000, we could walk out the back door right then. And I realized this is where it begins. Organ harvesters, sex traffickers, slave labor masters. This is where they come. And so we did the operation, and we were able to pull these 28 kids out from hell. And you saw some of those images and videos in that trailer. But the little boy was not there. But we didn't give up. We've been to Haiti more times than I can count, following leads, and I can't tell you much more. It's fine what I've told you already, but we have a team as we speak in place, in a certain place, and we're closer than we've ever been. And when you walk out and see that poster out there, there's one guy with a big, strong guy with a beard. He's our former Navy SEAL, and he's leading that team right now. And I've never done this before, and I don't know if it's going to be weird or awkward. And I don't know why I'm doing it, but I'm going to ask you all to just take a moment of silence just right now and pray for them. Because this could be the week that we bring this little boy home. So if you just for 30 seconds or so, if we could take a moment of silence and just pray for them right now, because I know that works. Okay, thank you. And I would note that this father and his family, and I've met his family, he has 5 kids. They're one family of hundreds of thousands of families who are in that very place. And that's why I appreciate Jason's words so much. That we are in a different place, most of us. That we have our kids. All of a sudden, a lot of our problems that we deal with, and we all have them every day, they seem a little smaller, don't they? When you consider what's going on. And may we continue praying for all the other families who don't have at least the hope that the Marty family has, because something's happening at least. And we plan to, based on what we're finding, we plan to rescue a lot more kids than just this little boy, based on what we have found. And someday we'll be able to tell the whole story to you. And it'll be a miraculous story to be told. The other case that kind of simultaneously was pushing me out, when I was a government agent, I was asked to go down to Colombia and do a training on child trafficking. And I was very frustrated with a lot of the government trainings that I was participating in, even the ones I was giving. It was like check the box, get through the PowerPoint, and go home, and you did it. And so I had this room full of these federal agents in Colombia, and I had the PowerPoint, the standard spiel that I was supposed to give, and I just closed the book. And I said, you know what, I might get in trouble for this, but we're not going to go over this. We are going to do a case right now. We're just going to do a case. If you were going to save kids, where would we start? And we just went through this whole case. We took 2 or 3 days, and we built this plan that we're going to come and rescue kids who are being trafficked in one of the highest trafficking countries on earth, in Colombia. And so I went home all excited, but what I had done was very naive to think that I was going to get the resources to come down and do this operation because, again, no, I'm not blaming the government or my former bosses or agency, but if there's no nexus back to the United States, if there's no U.S. traveler or U.S. child involved, then we don't have business going in, at least jurisdictionally. And I was very frustrated because I'd come up with clever ideas about how we could call it a training, but they need us to come down and finish the job. And I couldn't get them to come down, but I had promised, just like I had promised this man from Haiti, I had promised these Colombian officials, and more importantly, the kids that I knew were out there, that we'd come back. And we weren't able to do that. And so when we left, the government, the first thing we did was buy tickets to Haiti and to Colombia. And off we went. And through a series of successes and failures and working and trying to execute this plan, we ended up doing a series of operations, one of which General Reyes talked about, one of which rescued 123 victims in about 1 hour in 3 different cities. And I want to show you a quick clip. We were fortunate enough to have CBS National News cover this story. They actually came down and got some of the operation film. So let me just show you this quick clip. I have an amazing team. I get uncomfortable when I watch this. I really, truly get undue credit as the face of the organization. I have a team that is unbelievable. And I know that Sean knows this. He knows my guys. A lot of them can't stand on the stage because they are deep undercover and doing amazing things, even as we speak. And the report, you noted that they talked about this beauty queen. Just so you have a little idea of how these guys operate. They had recruited this beauty queen, this beautiful 24-year-old woman who was famous in the town of Cartagena for winning. She was Miss Cartagena. They recruited her to be a recruiter. And they'd walk into the homes. They targeted these kids at 9 years old. And they'd go to their families, whether in Colombia or outside, and say, come, you just want a scholarship to our beauty school, to our modeling school. And I'm going to train you. Look me up. I'm famous. And of course, they buy it. Oh, you're going to be famous, and your family's going to be wealthy. And they take these kids, and for about 1.5 to 2 years, they groom them. You might not be familiar with that term, at least in the way these guys use it. They give them drugs. They show them pornography. They desensitize them, and they start bringing Johns in to rape them. And these are the kids we ended up liberating pursuant to this operation. And this beauty queen, of course, she's in jail and still in jail. We've been able to do operations in about 12 different countries already. A lot in Latin America. We've been in Mexico, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Dominican Republic, Haiti, Colombia. We've been in Uganda. We've been in Thailand. We've done several operations in the last month, if you're following us, in India. Just 3 weeks ago, we busted up an organization that had trafficked these kidnapped girls, and these girls lived, there's these bedrooms where they would sell them in, and behind each bedroom there was a little door that would open up, a little trap door, and that's where they lived, like rats, behind the doors, and they'd just throw food and water at them and pull them out when they needed them. This is the reality. This is the reality of the situation. This is the hell that millions are forced to live in. We must be their saviors. We must stand up and be their hope. I want to thank you again for supporting us. Help us get into every country on earth. Help us to continue this fight. And I want to leave you with a little word of wisdom that I once heard, and it's so applicable to what you're doing right now. The only thing required for evil to triumph is for good people to sit there and do nothing. So thank you for doing something, and let's continue to do a lot more. Thank you so much.
Mic check. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been asked to come for just a couple of minutes and maybe lighten things up a little bit. What Tim and I have been talking about are very weighty, very dark, very deep issues. And so I wanted to share a couple of experiences that maybe shed some light on the camaraderie and humor that can even come in situations as dire as these. As you saw in the video of the takedown, we were all standing around a table. I was playing the role of the bodyguard for the jefe, the main buyer. And I was chosen, according to Tim, for being ugly and mean and menacing, and that's why I got to play that role. I also spoke Spanish, so Tim and I were helping to transact the deal. And once the takedown occurred, and you saw some of them rushing in, it was pretty helter-skelter. All of us scattered. Tim was getting cuffed along with the bad guys and doing a great job yelling, "We're Americans, you can't do this to us, we're going to call the embassy." And he was accusing the real traffickers of being snitches and selling us out. Well, I had run down with Jefe to protect him like a good bodyguard would do. And as the agents, who knew who we were, but they were trying to sell it also, were chasing after us, I jumped on him to protect him and become a human shield. Well, they cuffed us. They put their boots down in our necks. We had our face in the sand. And then they processed the bad guys for about 45 minutes. Well, it was a little uncomfortable because we were there, face down in the sand, red ants crawling all over our face, biting us. And I'm sitting next to Jefe, who leans over and says, "Man, you did such a great job selling that whole thing with the dive and everything." He said, "You really could have a future in this security deal." He said, "If you don't win the election next week, I want to hire you as my personal bodyguard." And so I said, "Gee, thanks for the vote of confidence. I'd much just rather get reelected and work on that." That was one of my roles. The night before the event occurred, Tim asked me to come in and stage the little island so it looked like a raucous bacchanalian sex party. And if you can imagine, again, we have all these military and law enforcement guys. A bunch of them are returned missionaries. Everything's all rolled up neatly, looking very military. Doesn't look anything like a party. And so they turn to me and say, "Hey, Sean, you went to law school at Berkeley, so you're probably the closest thing we have to being an expert in partying, and you're in charge of staging." And so one of the things we thought of, and this is Tim's idea, he said, "We got to get rid of the beer, because we have to look like we're drinking beer or there's no real party. These guys are going to get spooked and run away. But most of us don't drink beer, so let's just pour it out, and we'll refill it with apple juice." I said, "I got it. We'll take care of it, Tim." So you see a bunch of guys pouring beer out all over the island. Now this really confused and perplexed two of the embedded CTI agents from Colombia, as you can imagine. And they came up very quietly and humbly to me and said, "Senor Sombra, bodyguard and all that, why are we pouring beer out? Is that a way we bless the operation beforehand for the island? And why are we doing that?" And I said, because they were very sincere, I said, "No, I don't drink beer. I'm Mormon. I don't drink beer." And they immediately said back, "Well, we're Catholic and we do drink beer, and we would love to help you if we can." And so I said, I grew up in a Catholic Mormon household, and I know exactly what you mean, so have at, guys. And those two guys, I have to say, took one for the team. Together they polished off 16 Coronas or Dos Equis that night, maybe weren't as effective the next day, but luckily we had other agents with us. I mentioned that in part in jest, but also to underscore one other thing. Look, sometimes people have asked, is this a Mormon organization? Now, there are some people of the LDS faith there, but it's not a Mormon organization. It is an organization that opens its arms and welcomes people of all backgrounds and all faiths, but it is a faith organization, and I was so glad that Tim took a moment to pray for our brothers and sisters in arms who are out there risking their lives. to save children. And I was so appreciative of the wonderful invocation to start this meeting off and call down the powers of heaven from God, however you imagine God to be, because that's what this is about. We could not do this without our faith, and Tim has set that example for us, and I just want to recognize that and also dispel any notions that we're only a Utah-centric Mormon organization. We're a worldwide organization that just happens to have started in Utah. And again, let everyone know we accept people. We need people of all backgrounds to join us in this fight. Now, I've been told that we're going to forego our next video presentation. So should I just turn the time back over to Franklin then now for the final push? Maybe ask Franklin and Tim both to join me here up on stage. Come on up, guys. Tim, come back up and join us. As they're coming up, you'll also notice that all of the jump team guys are really buff and ripped. I am not. And so any of you guys who aspire to be on a jump team someday, no guarantees, hit the gym, start working on it. I'll join you, and maybe we'll end up with guns like Tim and Coop and all those guys over there. It's kind of embarrassing because I often have to stand taking pictures with them in front of that big banner with all those buff guys with their arms bulging out, and I'm doing that fake thing, you know, where you push your muscle out and trying to look big. Guys, I wanted to turn it over. It says on the program that it's time for Franklin to recognize some folks, to wrap things up, and I'm sure if Tim has any last words, no one's going to object to hearing anything from you. You get the final say, brother.
I gave my last punchline, though.
Well,
Franklin, go for it.
Okay. All right, no pressure.
Franklin's now going to do his own rap since he put me on the spot.
Promise you I can't rap. What I do want to do really quick is, and I want to recognize some of the youth organizations really quickly. The girls, Davis soccer team, they ranked sixth in the nation. They did a fundraiser today. Let's give them a round of applause. Come on up here real quick. Come on up. And then I also want to recognize another youth group. I also want to recognize another youth group that's going to be helping with another fundraiser. Have them come up as well. Okay. It's always humbling when the girls' soccer team's all taller than you. How much money did you guys raise today? They've got a check here.
$5,000.
And can you tell everyone a little bit about what you did today, really quickly?
We ran a clinic for kids from 5 to 12, and we just had a clinic for them, and they came and we played soccer with them.
Yeah. Fantastic, yeah. Can everyone just take a picture right now so we have everyone's flash go off? Here, I'll get out of the way.
Tell them they can help. All the social media stuff.
Yeah, post this on social media. Post this on Facebook, Twitter, whatever you can. Help out. Come on, guys. Take out your phones. Okay. And then also there's another youth group that will be helping out with another fundraiser tomorrow, right? What will you be doing tomorrow?
Tomorrow we have a yard sale. You can find the address on ksl.com, and it's just to help raise money, and there'll be a raffle.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, you guys. Another round of applause. Thank you, guys. Let's give another quick round of applause to Tim and Sean and thank them for all that they've done. Appreciate it. They've got to head out. I'm going to share with you guys something that I felt really impressed to do as Jackie was asking me to kind of put an end to or a close to everything that we've learned today. And I think, number one, I hope you guys were inspired to participate in this cause, and you've probably, just by listening to Sean and Tim and hearing about their experience, how passionate they are about this cause, and I hope that you guys get involved. I want to share with you guys something that, happened to me about 20 years ago, and I've never shared with anyone. The only people that know this story are my wife, my mother, and my deceased father, but it's something that I think I need to share with other people that I think might help. About 20 years ago, when I was about 16 years old, I was getting on a flight, as I normally did. My family lived in Washington, D.C., my mother and I would often get on a plane and fly to Phoenix, Arizona to visit my dad in Scottsdale. I'd do that every holiday, every summer. And when I was 16 years old, for that summer, I got on the plane, like I normally do, and there was a layover in Columbus, Ohio. So when I got on the flight, there was a guy sitting next to, where I was going to be sitting in the middle seat. He was at the window, and he looked like a really nice guy. He was in his business suit, and he was probably in his mid-40s. And when I sat down next to him, he started asking me all kinds of questions, like, hey, do you play any sports? I said, yeah, I play lacrosse and I wrestle. And he started asking me questions about my family, and we just started talking, and I thought, yeah, this is a really nice guy. He showed me pictures of his kids. He had 3 kids and a wife, and he said he was coming back from a business trip in D.C., and I just thought, wow, this is a really nice guy, and it's nice to have someone to talk to on this flight. And as we landed in Columbus, Ohio, I'm not very familiar with the airport there, but as we landed in Columbus, Ohio, he kept talking to me. We're getting out of the gate, and he just kept talking to me, and I thought, this is just a really nice guy. And I didn't even think anything of it. When you're 16, you think you know everything, and I promise a lot of you that are 16 here or in high school, you don't know everything, but you think you do. And he, just kept talking to me, and we're walking around the airport, and I didn't think much of it. And finally, we get to a point where he stops and he turns, and I can remember, what he looked like, and I can remember specifically what he said, and I won't repeat it, but he said he wanted to do something to me, and it was pretty explicit. And I remember I looked at him, and I thought, this is unbelievable. 2 seconds ago, you were this nice guy, and all of a sudden, you're this monster. And I remember being so scared, so afraid, I couldn't even respond. And, I'm a 16-year-old guy, and I thought, I thought I was pretty tough, but I couldn't even respond. I was so afraid. And I remember I looked around, and I realized, we're 20 feet away from the exit of the airport. And I realized what he was doing to me. He was trying to get me to a place where no one, would see, or try to get me out of the airport. I don't even know what he was thinking. But I was so afraid, so scared, that I couldn't even talk. And the only thing I could do, I just kept staring at him. He was staring at me, and I just kept backing away. I kept backing away. I just thought, I'm just going to keep backing away. And I got far enough where I just ran to my gate. And this is before cell phones, so I couldn't even call my mom or my dad. And I'm just at the gate for hours, just freaking out, thinking this guy's going to come after me. So I get on the plane, and I get to Phoenix. My dad picks me up, and this is where it gets even stranger. I'm still scared, coming off this 3-4 hour flight, and I'm scared of my dad. My dad, who I know loves me, I'm scared of him. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, are all guys like this? What's happening? And for weeks, I couldn't even tell my dad. And eventually I did. And I've never even shared that with anyone else other than my wife and my mother, and eventually I shared it with my dad before he passed away. But the point I want to make here is, if me, as a 16-year-old, I was scared out of my mind, and this guy didn't even do anything to me, imagine what these little children that are 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, what these little girls or these boys are feeling when people are abusing them night after night, and people are actually doing things to them. Imagine the fear that's in their hearts. Imagine the fear that's in their eyes. And imagine what that nightmare must be like over and over again. We're asking you to help. Please make a difference. Do whatever you can. We want to end this disease, and we want a better life for these children. Please donate or do what you can. Please. we're asking you, make a difference. We will have people, as you exit, that they'll be able to accept cash or check or credit card. Whatever you can give, whatever you can do, give. And in addition to that, please help and volunteer and do whatever you can. I want to thank all of you for coming. I want to thank everyone for volunteering and for helping out. And we appreciate all of you. And let's give another big round of applause to everyone that's helped out. Thank you very much, everyone.